Так, добрий вечір. Добрий вечір, любі учасники. Рада, що ви мали можливість приєднатись до нашого вебінару сьогодні. Давайте перед тим, як розпочати, перевіримо з вами технічні моменти, і я вас попрошу написати в чаті на Ютубі, чи ви мене добре бачите і чи ви мене добре чуєте. Так, буду вдячна за ваш зворотній зв'язок. Поки чекаю на ваші відповіді і сподіваюся, що ви все ж таки мене чуєте і бачите, можу представитись і почати з організаційних моментів. Мене звати Ольга Коваль, я викладачка англійської мови для дітей та підлітків, викладаю в Green Country і також є тренеркою TalkEn.Cloud Academy. Так, і я бачу, що в чаті ви пишете, що ви мене бачите і чуєте, це чудово. Так, тоді сподіваюся, що так і буде протягом всього часу вебінару. Сподіваюся, що ніякі технічні проблеми нам не завадять продуктивно, ефективно і цікаво провести час сьогодні. Тому будемо розпочинати. Ви знаєте, бачили вже, що тема нашого сьогоднішнього вебінару – це Gamification in ESL Lessons. Але перед тим, як ми перейдемо до основної теми, заради якої ми зібралися, дозвольте мені декілька хвилин присвятити трохи організаційним моментам і також хочу трохи більше розказати вам про TalkEn.Cloud, про платформу, за підтримки якої якраз і відбувається наш з вами сьогоднішній вебінар. І так, що таке TalkEn.Cloud? Насправді, якщо ви зайдете на сайт TalkEn.Cloud, то одна з перших фраз, які ви побачите, що це all-inclusive для викладачів англійської мови, і це таки є насправді. Тобто ця платформа складається з декількох важливих компонентів. Це бібліотека інтерактивних підручників, також це система менеджменту навчального процесу, або абревіатура LMS, і це Академія розвитку мовних шкіл. І зараз давайте подивимось на кожен із компонентів трохи детальніше. Що представляє собою система менеджменту навчального процесу? Насправді це такий універсальний і достатньо комплексний інструмент для викладачів. За допомогою цієї платформи, за допомогою цього інструмента ви можете створювати профілі ваших учнів, а також ви можете об'єднувати учнів, з якими ви працюєте або збираєтесь працювати в групи, наприклад, за їх віком, або за їх рівнем англійської, за їх розкладом. Або ви можете призначати індивідуальні заняття, які будуть додані автоматично в ваш розклад. На платформі ви будете його бачити, і також цей розклад буде відображатись в особистому кабінеті ваших учнів. Також дуже зручним інструментом є генерація розкладу уроків. Прямо на цій платформі в своєму особистому кабінеті ви будете бачити календар, і в цьому календарі будуть позначені всі ваші заняття. Наприклад, на кожен день ви зможете побачити, які заняття у вас сьогодні будуть, чи це буде онлайн-заняття, чи офлайн, які матеріали використовуються для цього заняття. І також, якщо це онлайн-заняття, там одразу буде посилання на конференцію, на сам урок. Що ще тут є корисного? Це можливість прикріпити вступний тест з автоматизованим визначенням рівня англійської для ваших учнів. Тобто прямо на цій платформі ви можете вже протестувати рівень англійської ваших учнів, а цей тест буде перевірений автоматично системою, і ви побачите вже готовий результат, тобто орієнтовний рекомендований рівень відповідно до рівня англійської цього учня. Також тут можна знайти органайзер розкладу роботи вчителя та електронний журнал. І за допомогою електронного журналу ви можете позначати відвідуваність ваших учнів, а також ви можете ставити оцінки або позначати результати за тести. Ви можете залишати коментарі для ваших учнів, які вони також побачать, і також ви можете за допомогою електронного журналу прикріпляти домашні завдання. І ви навіть можете прикріпляти туди файли і посилання, які будуть активні для ваших учнів через їх особистий кабінет. Дуже зручно переходити на онлайн-заняття. Як я казала, вже в самому календарі для вас буде посилання на ваше онлайн-заняття, і у ваших учнів це посилання також буде постійно активним в їх особистому кабінеті, тобто це посилання не потрібно буде надсилати кожного разу, чи перейматися, чи учні його знайдуть, воно завжди буде на одному місці. І що дуже корисно для викладачів, це те, що ви можете відстежувати прогрес виконання завдань в інтерактивних підручниках ваших учнів. Тобто, якщо ваші учні користуються підручниками на платформі TalkEn.Cloud, ви будете бачити все, що вони в них роблять. Тобто, коли учні виконують якесь завдання в підручнику і натискають зберегти відповіді, ви побачите всі їх результати через свій особистий кабінет. Таким чином ви можете відстежувати їх прогрес, ви можете готуватись до того, щоб дати якісний зворотній зв'язок на наступному уроці, ви можете бачити типові помилки і так далі. І тепер трошечки детальніше про інтерактивні підручники. Також частина платформи – це бібліотека інтерактивних підручників. Зараз доступні 50 інтерактивних цифрових підручників, які покривають рівні від Pre-A1 до C1. І ці підручники розроблені для школярів і для дорослих. Що дуже важливо для нас, як для викладачів, це те, що також, окрім підручника, ви зможете знайти Teacher's Guide, а саме деталізовані плани до кожного підручника і до кожного урока з цього підручника. Ці плани насправді є детальними, тобто в плані ви побачите рекомендації, як, наприклад, можна зробити цікавий lead-in для якого завдання, як можна дати фідбек, або які додаткові матеріали, додаткові ігри або додаткові сайти можна використати. В цих планах ви знайдете посилання на додаткові корисні матеріали, окрім основного підручника. Іноді також можуть бути прикріплені презентації, інші роздаткові матеріали і так далі. Можна відстежувати прогрес учнів у виконанні завдань в підручниках, про це ми з вами вже поговорили. Є дуже зручною система тестів з автоматизованою перевіркою до кожного підручника. Я вже казала, що є вступний тест на визначення рівня англійської, і також для кожного підручника ще розроблені поточні тести для цього курсу. Вони теж є тестами з автоматизованою перевіркою, тобто вам не потрібно буде робити це вручну, але ви зможете побачити вже готові відповіді перевірення ваших учнів, продивитись їх, зробити висновки, підготуватись до зворотнього зв'язку. Окрім основних підручників, є також бібліотека інтерактивних воркшітс, а це воркшіти на різну тему і різного спрямування, тобто це можуть бути лексичні воркшіти, граматичні або на розвиток навичок. І дуже часто ці воркшіти якраз стосуються цікавих, дуже актуальних тем, наприклад, Олімпіада чи Євробачення, новий серіал і так далі. Тобто щось, що учням зазвичай цікаво. І окрім того, доступний конструктор інтерактивних воркшітів. Якщо ви продивитесь воркшіти, які вже є створеними на платформі, а вам сподобається формат завдань, і ви захочете зробити щось схоже самостійно, це також можливо. В конструкторі інтерактивних воркшітів є дуже багато різних типів завдань, різних форматів, і ви можете використовувати будь-яке наповнення, залежно від того, що цікаво вашим учням, які у них потреби, і ви можете в цьому бути максимально гнучкими. Також часто питають про те, як отримати сертифікат, тому також швиденько нагадаю інформацію основну про це. Нагадую, що за участь в цьому вебінарі, за бажанням, ви можете отримати сертифікат. І зараз давайте подивимось, як це зробити. Коли ви реєструвались на цей вебінар, ви отримали лист підтвердження реєстрації. В цьому листі вже були вказані реквізити для оплати. Один сертифікат коштує 100 гривень. Тобто, якщо ви хочете отримати сертифікат після цього вебінару, вам потрібно буде оплатити його за реквізитами, вказаними в листі, і у відповідь на цей лист надіслати скріншот вашої квитанції. Далі, протягом 24 годин після завершення вебінару, на цю саму електронну пошту ви отримаєте тест. Тобто після оплати, протягом 24 годин після завершення вебінару, ви отримаєте посилання на онлайн-тест. Для того, щоб отримати сертифікат, вам потрібно буде пройти цей тест на 80 та більше відсотків правильних відповідей. Якщо, наприклад, ви пройшли і отримали менше 80% правильних відповідей, це не страшно, це нормально, тому що ви можете пройти цей тест ще раз, і кількість спроб є необмеженою. Також протягом 24 годин після вебінару ви отримаєте follow-up email зі статтею, а в цій статті ви знайдете підсумки цього вебінару. Сьогодні я буду багато онлайн-ресурсів показувати вам, і цій статті з підсумками вебінару ви якраз зможете знайти посилання на всі ці онлайн-ресурси, про які ми з вами будемо сьогодні говорити. Тому не хвилюйтесь, якщо ви щось не встигнете собі записати, чи якийсь сайт вас зацікавить, але ви не встигнете його знайти, ви отримаєте лист, де будуть якраз всі ці посилання перераховані. Так, з організаційними моментами це все. Якщо поки що по цьому немає питань, ми зможемо з вами розпочинати. Якщо будуть питання, пишіть їх в чаті. Я, можливо, трошки з затримкою, але побачу їх і буду намагатись відповідати. So, okay, let's start the main part of our webinar. So, today we will talk about gamification in ESL lessons. First of all, I would like to ask you, so I would like to start with a question to you. So we will discuss a lot of games, a lot of online tools which we can use with our students. We will also talk about some offline games in which students have to move. Before we start talking about it, and before I start telling you a lot about online tools and offline games, which I know and which I use, I want to ask you, what games do you use in your lessons already? So I would like to ask you to share with us in the chat what games you usually use in your lessons. So you can mention some online websites or some online games or some offline activities or some game elements which you use with your students. So let's take just 30 seconds or 30, 40 seconds and let's try to share our experience with our colleagues in the chat. Yeah, so you can mention anything, like any tools, any games which come to your mind, or maybe something that you know about, but you haven't used yet, but you want to try in the future. So it would be really interesting for me to know. Because maybe you will mention some of the tools I'm going to talk about today. So then, I will just talk about them briefly and pay more attention to some new tools for you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I can see Bamboozle and Kahoot. Wonderful. Yeah, I love those tools. I also use them. Okay, anything else? Kahoot quizzes, Blue Kit. Okay, wonderful. Wordswall, Twee. Okay, so that's an interesting tool. So some of the tools which you have mentioned, we will discuss today. Some of them we won't. So if you are interested, if you find some new names of some new tools in the chat, you can take screenshots or you can take notes to make sure you check them out after the webinar. Simon says guessing game, board games, Jeopardy games, Kahoot, Bamboozle, Wordswall. Okay, thanks a lot. So you can continue sharing tools which you use in the chat. Yeah, so don't forget to take some screenshots or take notes on some new tools for you so that you can check them out after the webinar. I will make sure to do it myself because there are some new tools which I haven't used. And then we will get started. So, first of all, let's define. So what gamification is? So what are we going to discuss today? Gamification is learning through play by using games with clear learning objectives or adding some game elements to the learning process, such as competition, prizes, challenges, etc. So we're not talking about games as the only way to learn. So when we use gamification in our lessons, it doesn't mean that like the whole lesson, we just play some games, we just have fun and nothing else. So it doesn't mean that we can't use any traditional tools at all. Like for example, it doesn't mean that our students can't do some exercises in their textbook or listening comprehension tasks or read some text, etc. But it means that we try to make this process a bit more interesting for our students with the aim to make it more effective. So it's not just about entertaining our students and having fun in the lessons. It's about trying to make the learning process more effective for our students by engaging them more by interesting tasks which we use. So today we will discuss some games with clear learning objectives. So not just some games we can play in the lesson to have some fun. Yeah, but we're going to be talking about games which combine two benefits, like two good things. So first of all, such games help our students improve their language skills. And at the same time, these games are interesting for our students. So it means that the task completion will be more effective for them. And also we will talk about some game elements which we can use in the learning process and which can become so-called good traditions, good classroom traditions. Yeah, so some small elements or some motivation elements which we can use during our lessons or throughout an academic year or a term or some set of lessons. So now we know what gamification is, but let's discuss some benefits of using games. Yeah, again, as for me, that's not just about having fun. It's nice to have fun in the lessons, but that is not the main priority for us. But yeah, why using games can be beneficial for our students? So first of all, it makes learning more active. Yeah, so more students are involved at the same time. If, for example, our students are playing a game in pairs or in small groups or in teams, it means that a lot of students are involved simultaneously. So not just one person is talking and everybody else is waiting, but a lot of students are taking active part in the learning process at the same time. If we use games which are interesting to our students, it can increase their intrinsic motivation. So it means that they will complete tasks not just because they have to do it or because they just don't want to get a bad mark or to be punished, but they will complete tasks because they want to do it, because the task itself is interesting for them. And again, of course, in such a way, they will be able to complete the task faster, better, and remember the information for a longer time. We can also learn and practice some soft skills with the help of the games. Like, for example, if you use some creative tasks, if you ask your students to make up a story or a poem or draw a picture and then describe it. So we can help our students develop their creative thinking skills. Also, for example, critical thinking and problem solving. If we use games like role plays or investigation games, yeah, so that's a great opportunity for them to develop those skills. So one more skill which we can help our students to develop through play is collaborative and teamwork. So if we use team games in which our students need to cooperate to get one aim, then of course it will be beneficial for them because it's one of the skills which they are very likely to use outside of the classroom. Also, games make learning more emotional. Yeah, and when we play games, it helps our students build positive associations and develop positive attitude towards learning in general and towards the topic which you are learning. And again, it can help make the information more memorable for them. And of course, games can help reduce stress level in our classroom because, yeah, so language learning is a rather stressful activity for the students, especially those whose level of English proficiency is rather low. Yeah, so very often they feel vulnerable and insecure during the lessons. They lack confidence to start using the language. But if we use some game elements, they are more likely to relax a bit more, yeah, and will be more eager, at least to try to start using the language during this game. Okay, so I hope that I have convinced everybody that that's a good idea to use some games in the lesson. Yeah, and very often I hear from other teachers that, okay, it's nice to use some games, it's wonderful, it's really interesting, and it can make our lessons more effective, but we don't have enough time for that. So in the next section of this webinar, I will tell you about some games which I like, or some tools which I use, and I will try to, again, tell you how I do it and why you actually do not need any extra time to play a game in the lesson. So, and let's start with some types of games. So in this section, we will talk about some games and tasks which will be suitable for online and offline lessons. We will also discuss some no resources games. We will talk about when and how we can use games in our lessons and how we can transform some tasks from the textbook in a game format. And let's start with games, which will be suitable either for online or for offline lessons or for both. And we will start with some online tools. So it doesn't mean that you can't use those tools for offline lessons. It is also possible if you have internet connection in your classroom and at least one gadget. So you can also use them for offline classes as well. And the first block is online quizzes. Yeah, and you have mentioned a lot of these tools in the chat, so I won't spend much time on these tools. I'll just discuss each of them very briefly. And if you're interested in trying any of them out, or if you see any new tools for you, you can just remember the names and you will be able to find the links to those tools in the follow-up letter, which you will get after the webinar. And so I guess that the most universal and the most popular online tool is Kahoot. So most of you know this tool, I'm sure. Yeah, and so that's a wonderful website which can be used to create online quizzes, like on basically any topic. So you can create your own quiz, or you can find some ready-made quizzes on the website, and if you like them, you can use them with your students. In most cases, so we use Kahoot to play multiple choice games. So for example, you start a live game, then your students will join this game using their own gadgets. They will see a code on the screen or a QR code which they can scan. And when they join the game, when you start this game, everybody will see a question on their screen, on their gadget, and they will have like 30 seconds or 1 minute to choose the correct option. So when they do it, you will see the leaderboard on the screen. You will see how many correct answers your students got, where they got mistakes, and you will be able to give instant feedback to them. The next one is quizzes. So quizzes is rather similar to Kahoot. It's also a platform which you can use for online quizzes on any topics. You can also use multiple choice formats there. And there are also some other options. I prefer quizzes to Kahoot when I want my students to type the answers. Yeah, but many other formats are like really similar on Kahoot and on quizzes. So if you haven't tried them yet, you can check both of them out and see which one you like more. So the next one is Bamboozle. Again, a lot of you mentioned this tool in the chat. It's one of my favorite ones because like your students don't need to use their own gadgets to join the game. You just need one gadget, your gadget, to start the game and show your screen to your students, like demonstrate your screen. So the idea is that you can divide your students into some teams, or they can also play individually. I prefer team mode. Yeah, so you can assign who is in team 1, who is in team 2, and your students take turns to pick any random number. So for example, number 6. So then you open number 6, and your students will see a task which they need to complete. You can add those tasks yourself, so they can be like in any format, because you just add tasks to Bamboozle in the format of text. So if you want it to be a multiple choice task, then you will need to add in the text format the question itself and 4 options, like 2, 3, or 4 options for answers. Or if you want to add a gapped sentence, like for example, open the brackets task, so you can just copy the sentence and paste it there. So it's really, really easy to create a game here. So then you open this number. So your students complete the task which they see. If the answer is correct, you will click OK. If the answer is incorrect, you will click oops, and your students will get some points or they won't get any points. What I like about this game most of all is that there are some power-ups here. So there are some unexpected moments. Like, for example, your students can choose number 4 and they will get a surprise. Like, for example, you get extra 50 points, or they can be some negative so-called power-ups, or I don't know if we can call them power-up in this case. But for example, it can say that like you lose all your points, yeah, and it makes this game really interesting. It's really exciting for the students. It's usually very emotional, and I love using it for different tasks. So sometimes I just take a task from a textbook, a task which I think is like a bit boring for my students, so they won't be really engaged, and I just copy the sentences from this task to Bamboozle. I save the game, and instead of doing this task in the textbook, we just play a game. So basically, that is the same task which the students have in the textbook, but in a more interesting format. So the next website which I frequently use is Quizlet. So more commonly, Quizlet is used for vocabulary. You can also use it for grammar tasks, yeah, but more commonly we use it for vocabulary. And here you can create some sets of cards. So for example, if you create a vocabulary-based task, then on one side of a card, you can add a definition or a picture, like a flashcard, and on the other side, you will add the target vocabulary item. Like here, you've got scared. If you flip this card, there will be a definition of this word. Then when you start a live game, your students will need to join the game using their gadgets. And then you start the game. So your students on their gadgets, your students will see a definition, for example, and they will see like several words from this study set. So they will need to match the definition to the correct word or to the correct phrase. If their answer is correct, they can go on. If their answer is incorrect, they lose all their points and they go to the very start. So the game doesn't stop until at least one of the students has all answers correctly. Especially, I love team mode on Quizlet. So if you haven't tried team mode yet, do it. So it's wonderful, but be careful because your students, so it's more difficult to use during online lessons, but you can use team mode for offline lessons easily. And your students will need to sit together with other members of their team. So when you start a game, they all will see the same definition on their screen, but only one person in a team will get the correct answer on their gadget. So they will need to look at all the gadgets and see who has the correct answer and click it. So one more wonderful tool is Jeopardy Labs. It's a website which you can use to create and play games in the format of Jeopardy games or Jeopardy quiz. So it means that there are some categories of questions here. So you can see here some vocabulary categories. They can also be some grammar tenses, for example, like present simple, present perfect, present continuous, so anything. And there are questions of different difficulty levels. Like questions for 100 points are easy. So questions for 500 points are difficult. So your students can play in teams. So together with their teams, they decide which category they want to open, like for example, clouds, yeah, and how many points they want to get for this task. So for example, they say 400. So you open this task, they complete it, and then you can either add some points to them or so not add any points if the answer is incorrect. Again, here you can create games yourself, so they can be games of different formats. Or you can find some ready-made games created by other teachers, and you can use them if they are suitable for your lesson. And one more tool is GymKit. Again, this tool is rather similar to Kahoot and quizzes, but so there are like some more options there. So there is some more variety because on GymKit, your students can also earn some points during the game, and they can shop online like during the game, so they can buy some bonuses or some power-ups for the points they earn, and it all happens during the game. So that's interesting. It can be a little bit tricky to use. So if you haven't tried GymKit yet, you can just check it out yourself before the lesson. Make sure you know how to adjust everything, how to start a game, how to give instructions to your students, and then you can try it out. I really like it, like to have some more variety in the lessons, because you know that sometimes students can get a bit bored of Kahoot or quizzes or Quizlet, so some tools which they like, but some tools which they are already used to. So you want to try something new for them. And some other websites which I recommend are Wordwall. I'm sure like most of you know what Wordwall is. That's a website which you can use to create some online games and interactive online worksheets. There are very different formats there, so you can create puzzles, crosswords, guess games, quizzes, memory games, etc. So you can see some card games as well, a hangman game, anything. Again, the content can be like anything what you need or you want to practice with your students. So you can create those games very easily, very quickly yourself. Then, if you want your students to play a game, you can just share your screen, or you can copy the link and send the link to your students, so they will be able to do this task on their gadgets. The only thing about Wordwall is that, if I'm not mistaken, if you don't have a premium subscription, so if you use it for free, you will be able to create only 5 games, like maximum of 5 games. That's not a lot, but that's okay. So if you just want to try it out, again, have some variety with your students, so 5 games, that's also nice. So the next one is one of my favorite websites. That's Genially. I really love it because so there are so many options and so many features there. So you can create basically any task with the help of this tool, and most of the formats, like there are a lot of formats which you can use for free. The interface is very beautiful and very simple. Like the design is wonderful there. With the help of these tools, you can create very nice interactive online board games with any content. You can create tic-tac-toe games, battleships, quizzes of different types, hangman games, etc. So I will show you some examples of Genially games a bit later today. So I will show you how to play tic-tac-toe games created with the help of Genially, and I will also show you what a board game looks like on this website. But if you haven't tried it, I really recommend, especially for board games. And one more wonderful tool, which is rather similar to Wordwall, but there are like more options and more games which you can create for free. So in most cases, I prefer learning apps to Wordwall, and you can use this website to create puzzles, crosswords, guess games, memory games, ordering tasks, etc. There are a lot of formats there. So again, you can create an interactive task, for example, an interactive crossword. Yeah. with any vocabulary which you want your students to practice, then you can send the link to this task to your students, and they will be able to complete this task online and check their answers. So they will see which answers are correct, which answers are not. And one more thing, which I absolutely love about learning apps, is that you can use this tool to find somebody who games for online lessons. So if you love find somebody who games, but you don't know how you can play them online, so you can try out learning apps, and you can create like very nice interactive online worksheets for such tasks with the help of this tool. Yeah, and also some more online tools. So these are not games, but just some tools which you can use to add some game elements, some play elements to the tasks which you use in your classroom or to the learning process in general. So one of my favorite classroom management. Okay, I'm sorry. I got disconnected for a second, but I hope now it's fine. So if you can hear me now, please let me know in the chat. Yeah, I hope that everything will be okay. Okay, so let's then continue. So about um, Plus Dojo. So you can add extra points or extra bonuses for your students during the lesson with the help of this tool. Like, for example, if you decide with your group that, okay, it's important for us to develop teamwork skills, so we want to learn how to work better in groups, then after a task in which your students have to work in groups, after your students do it successfully, so you can add some extra points for them. You can praise them and say like, okay, so teamwork is wonderful today. You get plus like an extra point for that. So you can edit the list of these criteria of the skills which you want to praise your students for. You can add other skills, other criteria which you want. And it can be a very nice game element in your lessons because, yeah, so you can agree with your students like, okay, if you collect 5 points on Class Dojo during one lesson, you will get a bonus. Like, for example, no homework for the next lesson, or we will play one more Kahoot game the next time. So you can discuss it with your students and decide which awards you want to give to them. And also on Class Dojo, you can find some other features. There is a toolkit there, and in this toolkit, there are some options like create random groups of the students, also pick a random student who will do a task or who will answer a question, and there is a noise meter, yeah, which you can use to see how loud your students are and to show them how loud they actually are. So the louder your students are, the higher like the scales will go. So you can agree with your students like, okay, we want to be at this level today, like no higher than yellow. And if we manage to do it, like again, everybody will get a prize, everybody will get an award, and you can discuss with them what it can be. So that was about Class Dojo. Yeah, and one more very nice tool to add some game elements even to the most boring tasks. So that's a random wheel, and that's a very universal tool. You can use it basically for anything. So the idea is that you add a list of like anything, a list of names, a list of questions, or some tasks which you want your students to complete. Then you spin the wheel, and a random question from your list will pop up. So this will be the question which your students will answer, or this will be the task which your students will do, or this will be the name of the student who will do the next task in open class, for example. I love to use this tool like for discussion tasks because sometimes for my students it can be a bit boring, like when I ask them to discuss some questions from the textbook. So I just add those questions to this wheel. So we spin, we pick a random question, we discuss it, and that's more interesting for the students than just discussing questions from the book. So they are more involved and more eager to participate than in this format. Or for some grammar tasks, yeah, so you can add some grammar tasks here, and instead of doing this task in the textbook, you can do it in open class, and you can ask your students like to type their answers to the chat, for example. And with the help of this tool, any boring task can become at least a little bit more interesting for the students. Okay. Yeah, so we've discussed some online tools which you can use for online lessons and for offline lessons if you have internet access and at least one gadget in your classroom. But let's also talk about some offline games. So if you have an opportunity to work offline now, so I'm very jealous, and that's wonderful. So it means that you can use some games which require movement. Yeah, so as for me, the main difference between games for online lessons and for offline lessons is that when we work offline, we can ask our students to move, and we can incorporate more movement in the learning process, which is rather beneficial, like for kids, for teens, and for adults as well. Yeah, like a lot of adults from my experience don't mind and even love moving during the lessons. So I will share some games which I love playing with my students, and I can say that I have played like all of these games with the students of all age groups. So I have tried all of these games with young learners, with teenagers, and with adults. And I have also tried like most of these games for individual students, like except for broken telephone and running dictation, for mini groups and for bigger groups of students. Let's start with the basketball game. Again, so that's a very simple game, and you can transform basically any task from the textbook in a basketball game. The idea is very simple. For this game, you will need a basket. So it can be anything. You can use a cup, you can use a box, a trash bin, a bag, like anything which is somehow similar to a basket. Then you will need some balls. Usually I don't have a ball in the classroom, so I just take a piece of paper and I create a ball like that for my students. That's also fine if you have a real ball, so you can use it with your students. So then when you play this game, so your students will need to do a task. So it doesn't matter what task it will be, but the idea is that they complete some tasks and they need to complete them correctly. So if, for example, your student complete a task or complete, even it can be an exercise from a textbook, like you ask your students to complete a task from their textbook, so they do it. When they are ready, they tell you, so you check the task. You point out to their mistake, you ask them to correct their mistake, or at least to try to self-correct. Then you count how many correct answers they've got. For example, they have 5 correct answers. It means that this student can try to throw a ball to the basket 5 times. So they get 5 attempts. Each time they score a goal, they win a point for themselves or for their team if you play in teams. So if, for example, they throw a ball 5 times and they score 3 goals, it means that they get 3 points in this game. So the team who scores the most number of goals wins. Yeah, and you can think what the award will be. Speaking about the task which you can use for the game, again, it can be anything. It can be any task from the textbook, or you can use some flashcards. So, for example, you can show a flashcard to one team, so they need to name the vocabulary item. If they do it correctly, they have one attempt to throw the ball into the basket. Or you can print out some cards with this some tasks which your students will complete. Again, they complete a task, you check it. If it's correct, they can throw a ball to the basket. If it's not correct, you can ask them to self-correct, and if they self-correct and the answer is good, again, so they are awarded with one more attempt to score a goal. Especially, I love this game with teenagers. It's really competitive and they are super engaged in completing the tasks. But I have also tried it with adults, like not with all adult groups I have worked with, but with some of them, and some of my adult students actually loved it. So one more game that is similar to basketball. It's not similar in the format, but it's similar in its logic. So that's a Jenga game. If you have a Jenga game, it looks like that. Yeah, you can see it in the picture. So if you have it at home or in the classroom, or if you want to buy one, you can use it during your lessons. Like, again, your students need to complete a task, any task, and if their answer is correct, they will be allowed to move one block and put it to the top of the tower. The idea is to try not to ruin the tower. Again, you can play it individually or in teams, and you can use any tasks for that. One more game, that's Broken Telephone. I guess most of you know this game. Your students need to sit or stand in a line, and you whisper a word or a sentence or show a flashcard to one student. Then the student does the same to the next student. So either whispers the word or whispers the sentence to the next student. And they do it one by one. So the last person in the line needs to say or write the word or the sentence out loud, or say out loud or write on the board. It's a very funny game if you use long sentences with the target vocabulary or with the target grammar. So then in the end, you can get some funny answers or some funny sentences which are different from what you have initially whispered. Again, it's fun for kids, for adults, for teens, and I like this game to practice target vocabulary and target grammar as well, because you can whisper sentences with the target grammar structures. And this game then will be kind of a drilling task, because they will need to repeat the structure again and again. And also this task will help them improve their pronunciation and listening comprehension skills. Running dictation, that's a classic game. You can play it, so your students can play this game in teams. Yeah, so actually just in teams. So usually in pairs, but you can also, theoretically, you can also you can also play this game in mini groups. Yeah, but usually it's done in pairs. You need to stick cards with some sentences or with the target language around the classroom or around the hall. So your students will work in pairs. Only one student in a pair will be allowed to stand up, come up to one sentence, like one card, read the sentence, remember it, come back to the partner, dictate it to the partner, and the partner will need to take notes, like write down the exact sentence with the correct spelling without seeing the sentence. So one student will see the sentence, remember it, run back, dictate it to the partner will write it down. The pair who finishes first and who has the correct spelling or who has the correct sentences wins in this game. This is a wonderful game to practice vocabulary and grammar. Because your students need to pay attention to the details, for example, to the articles or to some auxiliaries. pronouns, prepositions, etc. Or you can also use for this game some target vocabulary with difficult spelling or difficult pronunciation, because then your students will need to pronounce this word correctly for their partner to understand, so they will practice pronunciation. And the partner will need to spell the word correctly. So you will help your students improve their spelling as well. So a very universal task, actually, I don't know what the actual name of it is. I call it a mini board task. I have never had actual mini boards in my classroom, so I usually take a piece of paper and I put it in a file, and I use a marker. So you your students can work individually, or you can put them in teams. And they need to complete a task, and they need to write their answer on this mini board using a marker. So you can show a flashcard and your students will write the word, or you can show a gapped sentence on the screen and your students will need to open the brackets or fill in the gap, and they will need to write the correct sentence on this mini board. Or, for example, it's wonderful for ordering tasks. Yeah, so your students see some words which make a sentence, and they need to order this word and write down the correct sentence. It's a very effective game to practice the word order in sentence. So then, so when you give a signal, yeah, your students raise their mini boards, you read their answers, and you give points to the team which has the correct answer. So if both teams, like all teams have correct answers, that's fine. You'll just give extra points like for all of them. So I love to use this game again with students of any age groups, and I had a group of teenagers who were like not motivated to write or complete any tasks in the textbook at all. So they just hated writing, and I didn't know how to make them write effectively in the classroom. So I used mini boards with them a lot, and I just transformed some tasks from the textbook in this format, and they basically did absolutely the same which they had to do in the textbook, but it was interesting for them, and they were like really involved, and that was like the best way to teach them how to write properly. Yeah, and let's also look at some tasks which are normally like more often used in offline lessons, but we can also transform them so that they are suitable for online lessons as well. And let's start with board games. Yeah, like more commonly we use board games for offline lessons because we need a dice, so we need some physical counters and the game itself. But we can also do it online. And here I've got an example for you. So that's a Genially game. And by the way, that's a game which is taken from the materials from one of the textbooks on the TalkEn.Cloud platform. If you're interested in this particular game, it's Step 17, Unit 88. Block 2, yeah, so you can remember. And if you use this particular textbook, you will be able to open this game and play it with your students. So here, behind each number, there is a task which your students need to complete. Your students will play in teams. So you can put your students into the breakout rooms, and you will send the link to the game to your students. Then you need to, so this is very important, you need to ask at least, not at least, but you need to ask one student in each breakout room to share his or her screen and demonstrate the game to the partners. Then partners decide who has which token. For example, I have a pink one. So I just put it on start. I roll the dice. My number is, I guess, 3. Yeah, so my number is 3. So I go 1, 2, 3. So I open the task. I have to name the word which I can see on this flashcard. Okay, I can't do this task because I don't remember this word, but you understand what your students are supposed to do. Okay, so then your students take turns and play this game till the end. So the tool which I used to create this game is Genially. Yeah, so that's a wonderful website, which I have already mentioned. Or let's also talk about flashcards. Yeah, again, so it's very clear how we can use flashcards in offline lessons. We can play so many flashcard games offline, but we can also play flashcard games online as well. It's not a problem. There are different formats for that. I will show just one option to you. So that's what's missing flashcards game for an online lesson. So you will demonstrate the screen to your students. You will ask them to look at these flashcards and remember so what they can see. So you can give them 30 seconds. So we can practice with you. So you can remember the pictures which you see. Then you go to the next slide. And one card is missing. So your students will need to say which card is not here. And they remember again which words they can see. You go to the next slide and one more card is missing. So, and -1 card each time. So it's a wonderful task for to practice vocabulary. And again, so this game you can also find in one of the textbooks on the TalkEn.Cloud platform. Here you can see the name of the textbook and which unit and which block it is. So if you are interested, you can just take a screenshot, remember that. Also, races games, yeah. Commonly we play them offline. So for example, we can give the cards with the first form of irregular verbs to our students, and they will need to write the second and the third form on the board as fast as they can. And the fastest team with the most number of correct answers will win. But we can also do it online if, for example, we use any online board. So for this game, Jamboard is used. If you use Jamboard, probably you already know that, yeah, so it's going away on the 1st of October. So you can use any other online board for that. Or you can use Canva, for example. It's a tool which we normally use to create presentations, but you can also use Canva as boards for online lessons. So then you send this board to your students so they can work in teams, and they need to write or to type the third and the second form of each verb as fast as they can. Then you can check their answers, and according to the number of their correct answers, you will get extra points for them. Okay. So, and also, let's have like a very quick look at some games which require no resources and almost no preparation at all. And you can use them both for online and offline lessons. These games are very nice, like if you don't have so much time to prepare for a lesson, or if you have an unexpected lesson, or you have to substitute your colleague. So you can just pick any of these games, and it will be a wonderful start of the lesson. So you can play alias or charades with the students. You can do it online and offline. So if you play alias and charades offline with your students, like for example, you can give small like pieces of paper, small cards, blank cards to all students in the group, and you can ask them to write down one word, the most difficult word which they discussed in the previous lesson. So all students will do it. You will collect the cards, you will shuffle them. Then your students can take turns, and like randomly, one student will pick one card, and they will need to either explain or to mime this word to other students. Yeah, and others will have to guess. If you work online, you can use chat for that. So first of all, you can ask your students to send the most difficult words to the chat. So you will see them, and then you can use private messages, and you can send one word privately to one of the students. So they will need to mime or explain this word to others, and the others will get. Yeah, even if you don't know which vocabulary they have discussed recently, so you can just ask them to create those cards, or you can do it yourself, of course. Hangman games. I think, again, you know how to play such games. We need to be careful with such games because not all students like them. But if your students do, that's a wonderful vocabulary game. So your students will need to guess which word is here. So they need to take turns and name like one letter. If this letter is in this word, then it will appear here. If not, like a part of this like hangman will be drawn, and the aim is to save this person, like to guess the word before like the hangman appears here. Okay, so one more, that's a miming game. Yeah, it's very similar to alias or charades, so I won't stop here. And one more game, which I like, that's a banana sentence. It's not really common, but as for me, it's one of the best things to do as a warm-up task, for example, or a revision task. So you can ask your students to, like, first of all students can make up a sentence with any word from your vocabulary list. You can also ask them to use target grammar in the sentence as well. So then you will ask them to work, you can work in open class, or you can work in pairs, in teams. You can also do it with individual students. So one student will read the sentence, but instead of the word from the vocabulary list, they will say banana. Other students will listen, or you will listen, and you will try to guess what banana is. Like, for example, I can say that I love to play banana after work because it helps me to relax. Yeah, and my students will need to guess what I like playing, like, for example, football or tennis. Um, Yeah, and let's also discuss how and when we can use games in our lessons. Yeah, and I can see that it's already 7 p.m., so we were supposed to finish at 7, but yeah, due to some technical issues, we started a bit later, and I also got some technical issues in the middle. So if you don't mind, we will stay here like for approximately 5 more minutes. So I hope that it's okay for you. So we can use games as leading tasks. Yeah, so before we start doing a task, we can ask our students to play like a very small game. It will take a couple of minutes only, so you won't need a lot of time for that. But why we need to do it, or why it's a good idea to do, because it helps to raise our students' interest to the topic. And it helps students get ready to complete other tasks. So if our students are interested in this task, then they will complete it faster and more effectively. So we are not wasting time when we play some leading games, but we are saving some time on task completion. Yeah, because the more interested our students are, the faster they will be able to complete the task. So we can use some tools as Mentimeter, for example, yeah, as a leading task. So before we start reading the text about different personality types, so we can ask our students to brainstorm and create a word cloud with the adjectives which they remember they can use to describe a person, yeah, or personality. So if you have never tried Mentimeter, do it. I love it. So here you can create interactive online presentations. Also, you can create tasks like word cloud. So your students will join. They will type a word. When they submit, this word will appear on the main screen. And then if, for example, a couple of students typed strong, so it will be bigger, like the most popular word will be the biggest on this word cloud. It's a wonderful format for vocabulary revision tasks. Yeah, one more example. It's a game, What's in the Picture? Um, Again, it's a good leading task. Behind these squares or like shapes, there is a picture, and you will use animation, or you can just delete some parts of this picture, and your students will need to guess what will be there. So what's there? Yeah, and it can be related to the text you're going to read or to the audio you're going to listen. So you can also have, like when you open the picture, you can have a brief discussion of what's happening, whether they like it, whether they don't like it. Yeah, and then they will read a text on the same topic, and the text will be more interesting for them then. Um, this one is also taken from one of the textbooks on TalkEn.Cloud platform. You can see the names of all textbooks and where you can find such tasks. And one more idea is just a puzzle game. So the students need to guess what superhero these pictures like relate to. And then they will read a text, if I'm not mistaken, about superheroes. So we can use games for revision or warm-up tasks. With my students, I like to start like almost each lesson with a revision task. So first of all, we like greet each other, and then we start with a warm-up game, and it's a revision game. So it helps to set the mood for the lesson, revise the topic which you have discussed with them effectively, and help students get ready to work in the lesson. So they are energized, they are interested, so they will revise the topic and get ready for the whole lesson. So for warm-up games, I like to use any online quizzes like Quizlet quizzes, Kahoot game, anything, or mini board games or a basketball game, like anything which we have discussed with you. So of course, we can use games to practice grammar and vocabulary. And functional language, of course. So we can use games for controlled practice, yeah, like Kahoot or Quizlet quizzes, Gymkit, anything. So the games in which there is one correct answer, yeah, and students need to choose it. So that's controlled practice. We can use such games, different games for less controlled grammar and vocabulary practice. So it means like, for example, in this game, the students need to so they play a tic-tac-toe game, so they need to give a definition to a word. When the partner guesses which word it's about, like the first person can put their symbol on this field, like either a cross or a knot. Or battleship games, yeah. So I remind you that you can create tic-tac-toe games and battleship games with the help of Genially. And you can use games for freer practice. Like, for example, find somebody who games. Like, first of all, the students need to interview each other and find about whom these facts are true. And after that, they also need to ask some extra questions. Yeah, so when they ask extra questions, it makes this practice task a freer practice task because they need to make up their own questions and they need to answer the questions of other partners. So some useful books which I can recommend to you is a series of books which is called Grammar Games and Vocabulary Games. There are elementary, intermediate, and advanced grammar games, and elementary, intermediate, and advanced vocabulary games. In this book, you can find a lot of games on different topics. They are ready-made, so there are some photocopiable materials which you can print out and use in your classroom, or you can transform those games to be suitable for an offline online class as well. We can use games to develop skills. Yeah, like not commonly we use games for receptive skills, right, like reading, listening, but like still we can do something. So for example, we can ask our students to look at illustrations to the text only, yeah, and try to guess what the text will be about. Like any prediction task will be nice. So we can have some so-called silent listening tasks. So you play a video without the audio, and your students will try to guess what the people are saying, so they can try to lip read, which is really nice for their pronunciation. Or they can just, based on what they can see, they can make some assumptions what the video or what the audio is about. Then you will listen and check. You can also ask your students to move a bit, and before they start reading a text, you can ask them to find any place in the classroom which they like under the table, fine, like next to the wall, fine, like any place which is comfortable for them now, so they can take their books. You can allow them to read the text from this place, then come back and discuss it all together. Or when I work with online students, with kids and with teens, I can ask them to turn off their video like for 2 minutes, take their textbook, go to any place in their flat or in their house which they like, read the text for 2 minutes there, come back, and we will discuss it all together. It's not a game, it's a game element, but it can be very effective. And we can use games for productive skills practice, like writing or speaking tasks. So we can use such games as drawing dictation, collaborative writing, or like in this task, for example, students need to take turns and describe a picture, and the partner will guess which picture it's about. There is one more tool, which is called random picture generator. Like on this website, you can generate some random pictures, and you can ask your students to make up a sentence about this picture or a story about those pictures. It's fun and usually interesting. Yeah, and there are also some games like communication games. So the same as with vocabulary and grammar games, there are elementary, intermediate, and advanced communication games. The author is the same. And games for homework, of course, homework doesn't have to be boring, because we can use Kahoot as homework, we can use Quizlet, we can use Wordwall as well, so we can send links to our students and ask them to play those games at home. If you want to use Kahoot for homework, then you will just need to assign this game. So there are two options: start a live quiz or assign. So you will need to click assign, and your students, so send the link to your students, and they will be able to play this game on their own. Or you can ask your students as a homework to create a game for the next lesson, so they can create their own Kahoot game on the topic which you learned with them. Okay. Yeah, so task transformation we have discussed with you. Okay, and the last thing, so I'm sorry if I came here a bit late today. Okay. So the last thing I want us to discuss is some game elements which we can use in the classroom. So we have discussed some games, yeah, but there are also some game elements like challenges, some extra prizes and awards. And I'm sorry, I've got some technical issues with my presentation. Okay, so very briefly about some other game elements. So we can use challenges for our students. Like, for example, we can agree with our students, like all together, we've got a challenge with you. So everybody speaks only English in the classroom for the whole week, or for one lesson at least. Or everybody does homework for the next lesson. You can see some more examples on the screen. So if your student complete this challenge, they will get an award. So, for example, what can be an award? A good mark. So they can choose the partner they want to sit together with, like during the next lesson. They can choose what game you will play with them. You can play their favorite song in class, like anything. So you need to be careful with challenges. So they need to be timely. Like, for example, everybody speaks only English during one lesson or during the whole week. You need to be fair, of course. You need to reward your students. Please don't forget to do it. If you promise, you need to do it. So they need to be specific, like what exactly they need to do. You need to be consistent, reminding your students, like, do you remember we've got a challenge? Do you want to get this prize? And they need to be realistic. So challenges need to be challenging, but achievable. Also, you can use points and rewards. Like here, you can see a prize list. So your students, for example, can earn points for winning challenges or for doing some good things. Yeah, and when they collect, for example, 20 points, they can pick their seat. When they win 30 points, they have 10 minutes to draw on smart boards. So you can create your poster like that. You can also use competitions in your classroom, but please be careful because not all students love competition. Not all students are competitive, and some students are too much competitive, so they can get easily upset if they don't win. Yeah, and it's not really fair if you have some academic competitions. So then the students who are academically weaker are more likely to lose all the competition games. They will get demotivated and their self-esteem will be lower. So if you have a mixed ability class, then be careful with competition tasks. Or you can award your students not only for winning a game, but you can award all students for active participation in the game. Also, be fair, reward all students if it's possible. Yeah, so to use games and game elements effectively in your lessons, make sure you choose games which your students like. You can even ask your students, what games do you like? Not necessarily the games you personally like. Yeah, the main idea is that your students like this game, so they will get motivated. So make sure your game has clear and relevant learning purposes. If you find a ready-made game online, make sure it's really suitable to the needs of your classroom. For example, you find this game with irregular verbs. It's nice, you like this game, but there are some verbs which your students don't know yet. So you can't use this game in the lesson. You need to either adjust it, edit this game, or create your own one. Give clear and specific instructions. Some games have like a very complex procedure, so it's difficult to give an instruction to this task. So make sure you practice before the lesson. You can even write down the instruction for a game word by word, but make sure it will be clear and understandable for your students, and you won't spend too much time. And of course, don't forget to give feedback. So after games, normally we give feedback on content. So first of all, we ask about ideas, like what you have discussed. Did you like the ideas of your partner? Do you agree with your partner? Was it easy or difficult for you? And after that, we give feedback on the language accuracy. So we work on the mistakes and language correctness. And competition, yeah, so we can use some competitive tasks, but we need to be careful. So that's it. That's everything I wanted to share with you today. I'm really sorry for keeping you a bit longer today, and I'm sorry that I had some technical issues. I hope that anyway, this webinar was useful for you. So thank you so much for staying till the end. Yeah, I can see that most people stayed with us till the end. I'm happy to see that. Thank you for your comments in the chat. I will finish this translation like in a minute. So if you want to share in the chat some comments, or if you want to share some games which you have discovered during this webinar, which you want to use with your students, you can share with your colleagues. So thank you so much for the participation. It was a pleasure for me to be with you. Have a wonderful evening. And hope to see you in the future during our future webinars. Дякую всім за участь. Через хвилинку будемо завершувати трансляцію, поки можете поділитись в чаті враженнями і іграми, які хочете використовувати. І також нагадую про сертифікат. Якщо ви хочете отримати сертифікат, вам потрібно його буде оплатити за реквізитами в листі підтвердження вашої реєстрації на цей вебінар. А після оплати протягом 24 годин, тобто швидше за все, не одразу, а протягом 24 годин після завершення вебінару ви отримаєте онлайн-тест, який вам потрібно буде виконати на 80 і більше відсотків правильних відповідей, після чого ви зможете отримати сертифікат. Okay, so thanks a lot and see you next time.